Power is not a throne. When we think of power, it's common to imagine presidents, billionaires, and wars of influence. But for Robert Greene, power isn't a throne, it's a feeling. It's the ability to maintain self-control in the face of daily pressures and, from that, influence one's surroundings with clarity and purpose. The opposite is impotence, that feeling that nothing you do changes the behavior of others, the course of projects, the quality of conversations at home or at work. This impotence, as Greene echoes in Malcolm X, corrupts more than power itself, because it pushes a person towards passive-aggressive games, victimhood, and reactive decisions. In practice, power begins where naivete ends. The social world has invisible rules, sensitive egos, insecurities even in bosses, status codes, time and attention limits. Ignoring them is costly. Self-control, context reading, and communication strategy are not cynicism. They are social literacy. Presentations matter because we are not descended from angels, but from primates. Tone of voice, posture, timing, and framing shape the reception of your idea as much as the content itself. The first movement of power is internal, regulating emotions, choosing battles, calibrating what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. The second is relational, building predictability and trust, understanding others' needs, adapting your public role without confusing mask with essence. Enlightenment thinkers knew how to separate stage and intimacy. Today, that boundary has been lost, and that's why many suffer when they live the character 24 hours a day. Recovering this healthy distance frees up energy for what matters: results, connections, and meaning. The more you master yourself and understand the psychology of the environment, the greater your room for maneuver. And this is where three levers that Greene explores with precision come in: ethical seduction as the language of attention, body language as a truth detector, and deliberate training as a real source of confidence. The question is how to transform all this into daily practice, starting with: if this content is helping you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like to support the project. Comment on what power means to you and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. The topic is getting more and more interesting, and it's well worth watching until the end. If power begins with self-control, seduction is the art of translating that control into influence that the other person accepts with pleasure. Greene describes effective seduction as a back-and-forth game, not as cold domination. The hot seducer turns off the internal monologue, "Do they like me?" and turns outward. He observes, listens without haste, picks up on keywords, rhythms, micro-hesitations, and transforms this into actions. He chooses a place that resonates with the person's story, gives a symbolic gift that signals attention, adjusts the timing of the message to the mood of the encounter. This language of attention is powerful because it is rare. In everyday life, almost no one sees us as individuals. On the other hand, the anti-seducer is predictable. He moralizes and preaches in a territory that should be one of pleasure, measures every gesture with a cost-benefit ruler, restricts time, money, and energy, exudes anxiety, and seeks approval every minute. Vulnerability and insecurity seem similar, but produce opposite effects. Vulnerability opens space for care, admitting a doubt, laughing at oneself, asking for help, expressing desire without pressuring. Insecurity makes interaction burdensome. Premature jealousy, testing, constant need for validation. Deliberate effort still matters, despite the culture of instant gratification. Rituals, preparation, attention to appearance, scent, and atmosphere. Even a mental rehearsal of questions and stories that enlighten the other person. Rejections become data, not sentences. You calibrate. Apps don't replace presence. The dance of glances, tone of voice, pauses, touch, all of this is untranslatable on a screen. Even prosaic details tell a story. Using a coupon on a first date communicates a scarcity of spirit before saving a penny. It's not about money, it's about symbolic generosity. Ethical seduction also plays with mystery, revealing enough to create trust and curiosity, and withholding enough to maintain a light unpredictability. Full presence alternating with space for the other person to breathe. Generosity of spirit is measured in three currencies: time, attention, and intention. And the paradox is that you go slow to go fast. First security, then curiosity, then rhythm. Signs of connection are evident in the other person's body, leaning in direction, dilated pupils, breathing that matches yours, tiny smiles that reach their eyes. To apply this, start by mapping the other person's hungers. Some seek novelty, security, recognition, challenge, tenderness. Ethical seduction feeds the right hunger in the right dose at the right time. But to see these hungers clearly, one piece is missing: the silent grammar that weaves together each gesture and reveals what words hide. It's time to delve into body language and voice, because that's where words lie. The body almost never does. That's why, in practice, persuasion happens through silent signals: the muscles around the eyes that betray a genuine smile, the micro-tension in the lips when there's disagreement, the gaze that returns at the right time, not too early or too late. The voice gives it away before the content: trembling, accelerated rhythm, irregular volume, and an ascending ending in sentences signal a search for approval. A firm cadence, pauses that breathe, and a descending ending convey security without aggression. The whole body speaks. Those who need too much lean inward and peck the other person's ear. Those who lead tend to lean back, open their chest, lower their shoulders, occupy space just enough. The feet, almost always forgotten, tell the whole story. Pointed towards the exit, divided attention. Pointed towards you, engagement. Repeated self-touching, scratching the neck, hiding hands, aligning objects meticulously are anxiety regulators. But none of this works out of context. First, establish the person's baseline, then interpret deviations. Trust in sets of signals, not in an isolated gesture. The environment also modulates the body. Cold, noise, an uncomfortable chair, and tight deadlines generate noise. Don't confuse circumstance with trait. When there is genuine rapport, involuntary synchronicity arises. Breaths align, rhythms mirror each other, micro-gestures correspond. Mirroring is only useful when it stems from interest. Forced, it becomes caricature. To project presence, start with what precedes speech. Low breathing, long exhalations, a slightly slower rhythm than usual, clear and intentional articulation. A gaze that lands and moves away, neither fixed nor fleeing. Gestures that originate from the torso and accompany the idea. A smile that reaches the eyes only when the affection is sincere. In your voice, vary intonation without losing firmness. Avoid crutches and uptalk that transform statements into questions. Use pauses as a means of emphasis. Trying to manage 1,000 micro-commands in real time creates robots. Regulate your internal state and your body will follow. Pre-meeting rituals help. 2 minutes of breathing, reviewing the other person's objective, recalling recent successes to anchor calm and competence. And above all, observe. A minute of attentive silence is worth more than 10 minutes of nervous talking. Milton Erickson, paralyzed and only able to move his eyes, became a genius of body language because he had to see before he could interpret. It's a language learned through exposure and curiosity. Even so, without true trust, the voice falters and the body betrays. The question is how to build this trust that doesn't need to be faked and that holds up under pressure, and how deliberate practice and the accumulation of small victories can. True confidence isn't performance, it's accumulated proof. The body believes what the eyes have seen you do repeatedly under real conditions. That's why sustainable confidence is born from specific competence and a stock of small, recent victories that the brain uses as evidence. Think of it like a checking account. Each deliberate practice session, each difficult conversation conducted calmly, each on-time delivery are deposits. Empty promises and postponements are withdrawals. Deliberate practice isn't just repetition, it's repetition with focus, feedback, and adjustments. You isolate micro-skills, define a visible quality criterion, train in short series with total attention, and measure what has changed. Pianists practice scales before a concert. At work, their scales are drafts, simulations, role plays, cheap prototypes. Boredom is part of the method. It signals that neural pathways are being paved. Without tolerance for boredom, there is no legacy, only flashes of brilliance. In your 20s, this translates to accepting projects that teach more than they pay, seeking proximity to those already performing at the level you aspire to, and learning by doing. At any age, build a simple cycle of weekly evolution. Choose a key skill, define a benchmark, practice intentionally, ask for short feedback, and adjust. Progressive exposure reduces social anxiety. Start with brief, low-risk interactions, increase complexity with repetition, and treat rejection as calibration data. Take care of your body so it doesn't sabotage your mind. Sleep, nutrition and breathing control, heart rate variability, and with it, your presence. Prepare the context before entering the scene. Those who win before the game review objectives, structure arguments, rehearse openings and questions. Replace the fragile narrative of, "I have to appear confident" with, "I am the type of person who practices and learns quickly." Arrogance is noise to compensate for gaps. Competent tranquility is silence with substance. Avoid cheap dopamine from vanity metrics and invest in skills that pay interest in the long run. Clear writing, active listening, purposeful speaking, analysis, negotiation, research, systems building. Keep a practice journal and hold short debriefs after key events. Record what worked, what didn't work, and the next experiment. This way, confidence ceases to be a state of mind and becomes a reproducible process. But every process will be tested when reality goes off script, when the body fails, when the unexpected knocks on the door and demands a radical redefinition of power, meaning, and presence. It is at this point that, when reality deviates from the script, the true test of power appears. It's not about winning the room, it's about not losing oneself. Robert Greene's stroke exposes the boundary between image and essence. Without sports, with the left side of his body limited, it's impossible to impose presence through physical performance. What remains is self-control, purpose, and rhythm. Power becomes continuity under pressure. The yardstick changes, greatness becomes consistency, progress becomes tying shoelaces without anger, writing a page a day, enduring the boredom of physiotherapy, being grateful for walking a few steps. Happiness is redefined as perception, not possession. The morning sun, birds at the window, a well-written paragraph at 3 in the afternoon. The central practice is what fits every day. Meditation at dawn to reduce mental noise, writing as a lifeline, radical gratitude to recalibrate comparison. There are those who are worse off, without invalidating the pain. Empathy with one's own limitations becomes a strategic skill, asking for help, accepting dependence, redistributing roles, protecting energy. Rebuilding routines means creating context, fixed schedules, windows of contemplation, sleep hygiene, a stabilizing diet, boundaries with technology, scheduled breaks for the body. Ambition is renegotiated. Less volume, more density, less urgency, more cadence. Internal narratives replace "why me" with "what is possible here." A journal transforms frustration into data, naming fear disarms rumination. There is no romanticization of pain. Grief and anger have a place, but they don't dominate the agenda. Gentle discipline replaces self-violence. Embodied presence restores credibility to the gaze and voice, which remain instruments of leadership. Connection sustains. A supportive partner, understanding friends, meaningful work that anchors. Service to others aligns shadow and contribution. The public mask thins, the essence breathes. Between powerlessness and serene power, the one who projects life as a process, not as a spectacle, wins. The challenge is to transform these principles into a replicable protocol for difficult times, with clear steps for good and bad days, progress metrics that don't depend on mood, and practices that preserve seduction, authority, and creativity even when the body fails. To design this roadmap and integrate it with the levers of strategy and ethics that govern the social game, we still need. Strategy is not about betrayal. It's about ordering choices under uncertainty with criteria that protect values and results. Green insists on, it depends on the context, because social games have distinct arenas. With your team, transparency generates coordination. With competitors, opacity protects advantage. Concealing intentions makes sense when there is a real risk of copying, sabotage, or premature discarding of immature ideas. Revealing vision is vital to engage, attract resources, and align efforts. A good rule of thumb is to separate target audience, risk and gain. Who needs to know now for execution to move forward? What is the cost of leaking? What is the information asymmetry? If the project depends on cooperation, bring light. If the threat is mimicry, bring shadow. Mystery in the right dose maintains interest and avoids predictability. Absolute secrecy paralyzes. The same applies to the law. Don't trust your friends too much. Learn to use your enemies. At work, friendship carries affective noise that distorts criteria. Performance demands clear roles, psychological contracts, and feedback that is not hostage to personal ties. Converting a competent adversary into an ally can be the most powerful move, as it leverages motivation and redefines the narrative, provided incentives are well-defined and trust is built through deliverables, not declarations. Ethics here are not mere decoration, they are long-term architecture. Cheap manipulation exacts interest on reputation. Gossip, inflated promises, and undue credit erode the most valuable asset, the predictability of your character. Signs of integrity are repeated behaviors, meeting deadlines, admitting mistakes, giving nominal credit, saying no early when there is no fit. Mature politics is the antidote to cynicism and naivete, mapping egos and interests without demonizing people, choosing battles based on impact, calibrating the when and how of each conversation. Use layers of communication, a strategic core with maximum openness, execution circles with sufficient information to act, an outer perimeter with messages that protect timing and room for maneuver. At an individual level, design the role that the context requires and perform consciously without confusing mask with essence. The public demands clarity and calm. Intimacy allows for ambivalence. All of this gains strength when coupled with debriefing and pre-briefing routines. First, define intention, risk, and next step, then record learnings, adjust the narrative, and reinforce commitments. What remains is to translate these principles into an operational kit for quick decisions, with field checklists, example phrases, stakeholder maps, and progress metrics that allow you to measure trust, alignment, and competitive advantage without sacrificing. Transforming principles into practice requires a pocket kit for quick decisions, starting before any interaction, continuing through the live moment, and concluding with learning. In the pre-game phase, align intention, success criteria, and risk. why this conversation exists, how we will know it was successful, and what cannot leak. Translate this into an anchor sentence that organizes your presence, something like, I want to understand X, propose Y, and leave with Z defined. In the field, establish security and clarity with anchoring questions that reveal mental maps and incentives. What would be a good outcome for you today? What has changed since the last conversation? What needs to be true for us to move forward? State limits without confrontation. To avoid harming you, I prefer to say no now rather than a yes that I cannot fulfill. Build functional mystery while protecting timing. I will share details after we validate the prototype on Friday, replacing vague promises with objective milestones. Monitor your body and voice. Low breathing, conscious pauses, and descending endings in key phrases. Note foot movements, subtle smiles, and body language to calibrate rhythm and determine whether to deepen or end the conversation. Then, debrief in 3 lines what worked, what caused friction, and what the next experiment should be. Record commitments in writing, reducing noise and creating predictability. Map stakeholders by role and real interest. Who decides, who influences, who executes, who blocks. Assign degrees of power and affinity to prioritize energy. Use a simple risk-reward scale for transparency choices. High risk of mimicry and low cooperation, gain call for opacity. High coordination gain with low risk, call for transparency. Measure what matters with process and perception indicators. Response time, quality of feedback received, alignment of narratives between areas, reduction of rework, speed of decision-making. Signs of integrity become observable routine, giving nominal credit, admitting mistakes early, denying without blaming, meeting deadlines, record repetition, not exceptions. Create light scripts for recurring contexts, such as opening meetings, invitations, follow-ups, and elegant refusals, to free your mind from form and focus on content. In tense environments, activate a crisis protocol with a short window of strategic silence, accelerated fact-finding, a containment message, and a commitment to updates at a convenient time. All of this is more powerful when plugged into personal rituals that maintain a stable internal state and the gentle discipline that sustains daily micro-victories. But it still lacks connecting this kit to the levers of mastery and the long-term choices that define who you become as you play, so that mastery weaves together the short and long term. The operational kit only becomes a track when it's based on decades of choices. Start with your foundational skill portfolio, those that pay interest in any context. Clear writing, analytical reasoning, research, experience design, negotiation, teaching, and add complementary skills as the game demands. Data, finance, no-code, visual storytelling. Structure the year with a master theme and quarterly anchor projects that generate reusable assets, nameable frameworks, case studies, lectures, dense articles, playbooks. Composite metrics guide without becoming biased. Organic referral rate, invitation recurrence, cycle time, density of useful feedback, depth of perceived transformation. Choose environments based on talent density and the standard of truth. Mentors who demand results, peers who compete with affection, an audience that responds to utility and not spectacle. Curate challenges in the development zone. 70% fluency, 20% productive stress, 10% audacity. Protect windows of focus with physical and cognitive restoratives. Build intellectual properties that outlive you. Methods, nomenclatures, mental models, and public libraries that predate your presence. Create identity redundancy across multiple channels, text, voice, facilitation, so that a setback doesn't dismantle the whole. Treat reputation like economics. Consistency, integrity, and predictability of character multiply room for maneuver. Adjust the cadence with planning and review rituals. Quarterly retrospective, skills roadmap, B-side experiments to explore without compromising the core, simulate before exposing, role plays, prototypes, rehearsals with small audiences, seek controlled friction for anti-fragility. Tie ethics to strategy. The trick may win the day, but it's the standard that wins the decade. The trust of small circles finances giant leaps. Health is the infrastructure of performance. Sleep, nutrition, training, breathing, and meditation stabilize the state that sustains presence and judgment. Map out the transitions in the journey: apprentice, rare contributor, systems architect, mentor, and redesign roles as the context demands, keeping the mask in service of the essence. Point the narrative toward the process, not the spectacle, and translate all of this into a 7, 30, and 90-day plan that connects micro-victories to visible milestones with minimal checklists, cadences for self-meeting, and feedback mechanisms that fuel the cycle of deliberate practice, so that, without integrating the shadow, every construction cracks. Green insists that no one is outside the game of influence. Even models of virtue like Gandhi and Martin Luther King were strategists, which doesn't invalidate their principles. It only reveals human nature. The task is not to deny narcissism, but to convert it into a basis of self-esteem that fuels empathy. The effective origin matters, but the adult creates laboratories to transmute impulses. Anger becomes energy for training and focus. Envy becomes a map of skills to be developed. Fear becomes a design of gradual exposures. Moralism paralyzes. Applied humility moves. Anti-self-deception protocols help, distinguishing intention from impact, asking for specific and verifiable feedback, practicing reality testing with data and not narratives, observing somatic triggers that announce grandiosity or victimization. Informational hygiene is an ethical tool, reducing cheap dopamine, limiting comparisons on networks, curating what enters through attention like someone selecting high-octane fuel. For envy, use a 3-step script. Name it without shame. Extract the skill component you admire. Translate it into micro-practice plans. Publicly thank someone when appropriate to disarm the poison. For anger, institute a refractory interval with breathing, writing 3 lines of text, and only then responding. Transform complaint into a request and criticism into an offer of improvement. Reputation is predictability of character tested over time, meeting deadlines, giving nominal credit, denying early, admitting mistakes without buts, making micro-repairs as noise arises. Contemplative practices, such as the Zen mentioned by Green, train you to see things as they are, dissolving judgments that become noise and freeing up energy for effective action. It's not resignation, it's operational lucidity. A safe community accelerates this process. Peers who offer compassionate frankness, a common vocabulary for emotional states, cadences of retrospection, pause and return agreements, discreet celebrations to keep the ego in check when the tide rises. The central question is how to design an ecosystem that continuously channels shadow work into action, with personal rituals, team contracts, language checklists, and metrics that monitor shifts from reactivity to response, from comparison to contribution, from self-image to service, and from there build a 30-day plan that unites deliberate practice, applied ethics, and communication strategy, so that the 30-day plan functions as a laboratory that integrates internal state, applied ethics, and communication strategy in short cycles of deliberate practice. In the first 7 days, prepare the terrain. Sleep hygiene, low breathing with long exhalations in the morning, 10 minutes of meditation to reduce noise, an informational diet with cuts to stimuli that sabotage attention, a brief journal to map shadow triggers, and an inventory of recent micro-victories to anchor competence. Simultaneously begin a before-after process metrics log, response time, number of no's said early, amount of useful feedback received, Sense of presence on a simple scale of 1 to 5. From day 8 to 14, focus on silent grammar. Short, recorded voice exercises where you read your own meeting openings with descending endings, coordinated breathing, and intentional pauses. Low-risk meetings to practice eye contact, feet aligned with the interlocutor, gestures originating from the torso, and variation in intonation without uptalk. Conduct a 3-line debrief after each key interaction, converting impressions into data and establishing an anchor phrase for the week. Between days 15 and 21, bring the strategy to the table. Map stakeholders by decision, influence, and execution. Define minimum objectives per conversation. Apply a pre-brief, intention, risk, next step, and use layers of transparency according to information asymmetry and coordination gain. Test a difficult conversation with a clear script of opening, request, and limit, and record reaction and learning. Include an experiment converting adversary into ally under explicit criteria of mutual gain, without grandiloquent statements, only verifiable deliverables. From 22 to 30, anchor mastery with a concrete deliverable. Choose an anchor project that generates a reusable asset, a playbook, a case study, a nameable framework. Build inexpensive prototypes, gather friction in a small audience, iterate, and schedule a demo date with a clear scope. Maintain the cycle of micro-victories, 5 actionable feedbacks, 2 elegant refusals, 1 alignment conversation that reduces rework, 1 voice and presence rehearsal per day. Protect state with minimal, non-negotiable rituals and a couple of practices for compassionate frankness. At the end of the 30 days, compare process metrics, revisit the shadow journal, and consolidate what becomes a habit, what needs more exposure, and what leaves the portfolio. Translate the synthesis into a 90-day plan with a main theme, 3 projects, and density indicators, remembering that the goal is not to appear perfect, but to make reproducible a way of operating that reduces reactivity, increases predictability of character, and elevates the quality of influence. The final tie-in depends on how these short cycles connect to your public narrative and the role you choose to play in each arena without losing the essence. And it is precisely by weaving presence, reputation, and delivery into a coherent closure that public narrative is the bridge between essence and perception. The mask here is a tool, not a disguise. Instead of being authentic at all costs, design an editorial persona that translates your values into language, rhythm, and evidence. Structure 4 pillars that repeat with variation: promise, what you solve and for whom; proof, evidence, case studies, numbers, testimonials, demonstrations; process, behind the scenes that show method and practice; and principles, ethical lines that are non-negotiable. Tie it together with 5 P's of positioning: a problem you see uniquely, a clear proposition, verifiable proof, and a recognizable personality. Create your own lexicon of concepts and metaphors to increase memorization and distinction. Name frameworks and rituals, because what has a name gains social life. Define exposure boundaries. What is public? What is behind the scenes? What stays private? Overexposure dilutes mystery and tarnishes reputation. Total opacity prevents connection. Adjust the message to the stage without losing its core. In a long video, strong hooks and chapters. In text, density and synthesis. In audio, nuance and rhythm. In slides, visual clarity and hierarchy. The brand's voice is a set of repeated choices: cadence, register, degree of technicality, humor, calibrated fragility. Avoid uptalk that turns statements into questions, and use pauses for emphasis. On screen, presence begins before speaking. Light in the eyes, camera at the right height, clean sound, low breathing, a gaze that lingers and then moves away. Evidence is not slogans, it's demonstrations. Show the before and after, the reasoning, the error, and the quick correction. Create community rituals. Respond usefully. Call for contributions. Give a platform to student and client cases. Consolidate a common vocabulary that sustains identity and belonging. Functional mystery maintains interest. Teasers of next steps. Behind-the-scenes glimpses that reveal the method without giving away a strategic advantage. Partial goals that invite following the journey. Have a crisis protocol prepared. A short window of silence for investigation, a containment message with a commitment to updates, corrections without sensationalism, cascading micro-repairs. Reputation is predictability of character in sequences, not a grand declaration. Close each cycle with a public debrief when it makes sense, consolidating learnings and reinforcing principles in practice. To weave presence, reputation, and delivery into the same gesture, you need to design opening, question, and closing scripts that work in meetings, on stage, and on camera, with variations by context, as well as a repertoire of boundary phrases and invitations that create progress without friction, so that scripts act as tracks for presence. They free the mind from the format so you can focus on the content and the body. In openings, use anchor phrases that define intention, success criteria, and the next step. In meetings, to align, a good result today would be A. I propose B, and we'll leave with C defined. Is that correct? In pitches, in one sentence, who we helped, the problem, and the result in X. In 90 seconds, I'll show proof and propose a small next step. In difficult conversations, I want to solve, not win. Can I tell you how I'm seeing things and hear your interpretation before proposing something? In networking, replace flattery with usefulness. I read your work on X, applied Y, and obtained Z. Can I show you in 5 minutes and ask for advice? In encounters, ethical seduction opens with specific curiosity. I'm curious about how you learned X. If you're interested, I'll share a story of mine afterward. Core questions underpin diagnosis, depth, and alignment of incentives. What has changed since our last conversation? What needs to be true for us to move forward? If this were very successful, what would it look like? What would make you say no? How will you be measured in this project? Elegant boundary statements and refusals protect reputation. To avoid harming you, I prefer to say no now rather than a weak yes. I can deliver X within this time frame with quality. Besides, I risk failure and not doing it. I don't work with this model, but I can suggest A or B. Invitations create progress without friction. I propose a small step that validates the hypothesis in 7 days. Are you in? I'll send a draft and we'll schedule 20 minutes of adjustments on Wednesday. If it makes sense, I'll bring the prototype. If not, we'll end it cleanly. Closing statements solidify predictability. I'll summarize in 3 lines what we decided and who is responsible. Is that correct? I'll take X, you take Y, we'll reassess at Z. If anything changes, let me know by such and such a deadline so I can recalibrate. In a crisis, use restraint without spectacle. We are investigating. I'll be back at 5 p.m. with data and a plan. For now, we're adopting A, B, and C. To convert an adversary into an ally, you are the most critical person I can bring. Can we revise my plan according to your quality criteria? Functional mystery protects advantage. I'll share the details after validation with Group X. Proof replaces slogans. I'll show you 3 before-after photos and the method in 10 minutes. You decide if we continue. Remember the descending voice, the pauses, and the gaze that lingers and then leaves to maintain warmth and authority. These scripts are modules for training, adapting and combining by arena, and gain power when connected to pre-brief and debrief rituals and a conscious curation of exhibition and backstage areas. Preparing the ground for, up to this point, we have stitched together a map that replaces spectacle with process. power as self-control that expands room for maneuver, ethical seduction as the language of attention, body and voice as the grammar of credibility, trust as accumulated proof, strategy as contextual choice, mastery as a thread of decades, shadow as transmuted fuel, a 30-day laboratory to transform principles into practices, a public narrative that aligns promise, proof, process, and principles, and scripts that function as rails for presence under pressure. The design is coherent because each piece reinforces the other. A stable internal state reduces reactivity and improves context reading. Reading adjusts action, action generates evidence, evidence sustains narrative, narrative invites cooperation, cooperation amplifies results. Real results feed back into trust. Ethics cease to be rhetoric and become architecture, because without predictability of character, no game can be sustained. The same applies to the shadow. Denying it opens cracks. Integrating it generates density and operative compassion. Body language and voice do not replace competence. They make it visible. Strategy is not coldness. It's about careful timing and risk-taking to protect what matters. Mastery isn't a pose, it's the patient accumulation of micro-victories that one day resemble talent. Ultimately, the test comes when the script fails. That's when the mask needs to serve the essence, and the presence, even when tired, must continue to speak the truth. If you follow short practice cycles, measure processes, and maintain minimal rituals, in weeks you'll see less noise and more clarity. In months, a reputation that precedes your name. In years, a body of work that speaks for itself. The goal is never to stumble, but to learn to fall without getting lost, to correct early, to repair small, and to return better to the next game. Power, after all, isn't the volume of your voice or the number of followers. It's the ability to choose who to be in each arena without betraying what sustains you, to influence without violating, to build with patience, and to weather storms with rhythm. When that happens, seduction becomes care, strategy becomes service, presence becomes useful quietude, and confidence becomes a consequence. And it is at this point that life ceases to be a stage of reactivity and becomes a craft of attention, where each conversation, each offering, and each gesture compose a work greater than yourself, which remains when the noise fades and the essential remains.